Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Tom Schlueter with today's Tom's Take. I think I've referred to this before, but every day I check my email, I get a posting that is called This Day in Texas History. Well, this is what happened yesterday in Texas history. 80 years ago, the USS Texas was relieved from the Battle of Okinawa after 50 days in action. Texas expended a staggering amount of ammunition in that 50 days. While the battle was over for Texas on May 14, 1945, Okinawa was not secured until June 22nd. We're going to come up on the 80th anniversary of that here next month. This long, protracted battle was grueling for the land forces, but also exposed the Navy to near constant air attacks. The Navy lost nearly 5,000 men and another 5,000 were wounded. 36 ships were sunk and over 350 were damaged. Texas emerged from her time off Okinawa unscathed, in large due part to her crew's constant state of readiness. Captain Charles Baker included the following praise in his after-action report. Quote, "It is worthy of comment that this vessel remained in condition throughout the entire period off the coast of Okinawa, some 7 weeks. That the men took this without undue fatigue is a tribute to their spirit and physical condition. It is not believed that any lesser condition of readiness can meet adequately the emergencies of suicide bombers and suicide boats. The only answer to the approaching kamikaze is early and great volume of fire, using every gun that will possibly bear, and early warning by radar cannot always be relied upon. The men realized this and preferred to remain at their stations, resting and sleeping there as the opportunity offered, rather than be called up frequently from below, as would inevitably happen. The rest period, when it finally came, however, was much appreciated." Captain Baker's report at the Battle of Okinawa, filed May 26, 1945. Wow. I think I've shared with you before that the USS Texas started going through a refurbishing. Let me tell you a little bit of history on this. The Battleship Texas was on the front line of innovations in gunnery, aviation, and radar throughout her career. She was a veteran of both world wars, and today she's the world's last surviving dreadnought. Over her 34-year career, she was home to tens of thousands of sailors and Marines from all around the nation whose history she carries with her. She was there at Okinawa. She was there at Iwo Jima. She was there on D-Day. She started her course of history in 1914, the time of World War I. What a proud ship. But I don't want to just concentrate on the ship, because I need to remind you that a couple of years ago when they started refurbishing the ship, the Lord began to speak to me regarding not only the ship, but this state, and yes, I believe then the nation. He says, I'm restoring that which needs to be restored, and she will be seen again in her glory. And even though she will be a museum and not an active battleship, she will be seen for all the value that she held during her long career of sailing on the seas. And the Lord continued to speak to me, saying, watch carefully how it is restored, because that is how I am restoring this state and the nation. Wow. And then I want to say this comment as well. As I was reading Captain Baker's report, You'll notice there at the end how they stayed at their stations, how they slept there rather than going down and bunking. They didn't want to have to be continually called up, so they stayed where they were and made sure they napped when they could, but were constantly alert at what may be coming towards them as far as the enemy's ships or planes. I couldn't help but think of a powerful passage in Nehemiah 4:15 through 20. When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall, each to his work. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction, and half held the spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah who were building on the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on their work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me. And I said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, the work is great and widely spread, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. I hope it's obvious where I'm going today with this. I'm not just wanting to talk about a great dreadnought battleship that served all those years. I'm not wanting to boast about it being restored and how it'll be a beautiful museum down in Galveston, Texas, and how I was able to get on the ship when it was in dry dock and to stand underneath its great hull. All those were really neat times. No, I want to let you know what's really important here, and it wasn't about the ship. It was about those who were on the ship. Much like those that watched and built the wall at Nehemiah's time, these sailors saw how essential it was to stay at their post. When they could catch a nap, they did, but they most of the time spent alertly watching and waiting for any attack that might come. How that describes what God has appointed us to do. He's appointed us to stay at the position. Yes, we can rest. We don't have to do it constantly, but we do need to remain alert. We do need to maintain an intimate relationship with our Lord so that we are immediately aware of anything that we need to deal with, whether releasing blessings or decreeing destruction of enemy attacks against our nation, against God's kingdom, or against the ecclesia. Be alert in this season. Stay at your post. Some of you are constantly interceding, watching the gates, watching over what the enemy might be doing, or watching over what God may be doing. Either way, stay alert at your post. For then you will also receive the same commendation from our captain as they did the captain of the USS Texas. They maintained their positions, and we came through unscathed. Stay at your post, everybody, and pray and decree what God asks you to decree based on what you have received from him as you have sought his face. Y'all have a great weekend, and I'll be with you again on Monday.